Chapter 29. The days that preceded Maria's death were the most horrible of my life. I cannot possibly offer a precise account of everything I felt, thought, and did, for although I remember many of the events in incredible detail, there are hours, even entire days, that I recall as cloudy and distorted dreams. I have the impression that I lost days at a time under the influence of alcohol, sprawled across my bed or on a bench in Puerto Nuevo. When I reached the station at Calle Constitucion, I remember very clearly going into a bar and ordering several whiskeys in quick succession. Then I vaguely remember leaving and hailing a taxi that took me to another bar on Calle 25 de Mayo, or maybe Calle Leandro LM. What follows is noise, music, shouts, a laugh grating on my nerves, broken bottles, glaring lights. Then I remember a terrible headache and being half awake in a jail cell, a guard opening a door, an officer saying something to me, and then I can see myself walking aimlessly through the streets, furiously scratching. I think I went into a bar again, hours or perhaps days later. Someone took me to my studio. Then there were nightmares in which I was walking on the roof of a cathedral. I also remember waking up in my room in the dark with the horrifying sensation that the walls had expanded to infinity, and no matter how hard I ran, I would never reach them. I don't know how much time went by before I saw the first rays of light through the window. Then I dragged myself into the bathroom and climbed fully dressed into the bathtub. As the cold water began to revive me, I remembered a series of isolated incidents, ravaged and unrelated, like the first objects to emerge from receding waters. Maria on the cliff, Mimi brandishing her cigarette holder, Allende Station, a bar across from the train station called La Confianza, or maybe La Estancia. Maria asking me about the sketches, and I yelling, "What sketches?" Hunter frowning grimly at me, I anxiously eavesdropping on the cousins' conversation. A sailor throwing a bottle, Maria walking toward me with unfathomable eyes, a foul woman kissing me, and I punching her in the face, the itch of flea bites, Hunter lecturing on detective novels, the estancia chauffeur. There were also fragments of dreams, again the cathedral, on a black night, the infinite room. As my head cleared, some of the segments began to flow into others, rising from my consciousness, and the landscape began to take shape. Although with the melancholy and desolation of landscapes seen after a flood, I got out of the tub and stripped off my clothes. I put on dry clothing and began a letter to Maria. First, I wrote that I wanted to explain my flight from the estancia. I crossed out flight and wrote departure. I added that I greatly appreciated the interest she had taken in me. I crossed out in me and wrote in my person. I understand that she was a generous woman with the purest of sentiments, in spite of which, as she herself had informed me, at times baser passions prevailed. I still found it incomprehensible that a woman like herself was able to say that she loved her husband and me at the same time. She was going to bed with Hunter. I crossed out Hunter and wrote Senor Hunter. I thought the juxtaposition of the words going to bed and the unexpected formal address was very effective. And of course, she had the added annoyance I wrote of going to bed with her husband and with me. I ended by saying that, as she might realize, such conduct offered serious food for thought, and so on, and so on. I reread the letter, and it seemed to me that, with the noted changes, it was sufficiently cutting. I sealed it, walked to the main post office, and sent it by certified mail. Chapter 30. As soon as I left the post office, I realized two things. I had not said in the letter how I had deduced that Maria was Hunter's lover, and second, I had no idea what I hoped to accomplish by insulting her so unmercifully. A transformation, supposing my conjectures were accurate, that was obviously ridiculous. That a contrite Maria would come running to me? After what I had done, I surely could not expect to achieve that goal. Besides, I acknowledged that the only thing in the world I really wanted was for her to come back to me. But if that were so, why not say that? Why hurt her feelings? Why not tell her that I had left the estancia because I was suddenly aware of Hunter's jealousy? After all, my conclusion that she was Hunter's lover, in addition to hurting her feelings, was pure speculation. At the most, it was a hypothesis formed to help guide from future deliberations. Once again, then I had done something stupid, all because of my habit of dashing off impetuous letters and mailing them immediately. Important letters should be held for at least a day until all the consequences are carefully weighed. I had one recourse, the receipt. I looked in all my pockets, but I did not find it. I must have carelessly thrown it away. I ran back to the post office. Nevertheless, I stood in the line for certified letters. When my turn came, I asked the clerk, making a ghastly and hypocritical effort to smile, "You remember me, don't you?" She looked at me with astonishment. She must have thought I was mad. To correct the misapprehension, I told her I was the person who had just mailed a letter to Los Ombues. This moronic woman's amazement merely seemed to intensify, and perhaps wanting to share it, or to seek advice about something beyond her comprehension, she turned to the male companion, then looked back at me. "I lost the receipt," I explained. No answer. "I mean, I need the letter, and I don't have the receipt," I added. The woman and her male cohort regarded each other as two bridge partners might do. Finally, with the tone of someone completely dumbfounded, she asked, "You want us to give you back the letter?" "Exactly. When you don't have a receipt." I was forced to admit that in fact I did not have the precious piece of paper. The woman's stupefaction had reached its zenith. She mumbled something incomprehensible and again looked at the other clerk. "He wants us to return the letter," she stammered. His smile with incalculable stupidity. The smile meant to convey his brilliance. The woman looked at me and said, "This is absolutely impossible." "I have identification," I replied, pulling out some papers. "There is nothing we can do. I cannot violate the regulation." "A regulation, as I am sure you know, must be logical," I sputtered. On the woman's cheek there was a mole punctuated with a few long hairs that was truly beginning to offend me. "And you know the regulation?" she inquired scornfully. "It is not necessary to know the regulation, Senora," I replied icily, knowing that the word Senora would cut her to the quick. Now the harpy's eyes glittered with indignation. "You must understand, Senora, that a regulation cannot be illogical. It was, no doubt, drafted by a normal human being, not by a madman. If I mail a letter and immediately return to ask you to give it back to me because I have forgotten something essential, the logical thing would be for you to honor my request. Or is the post service hell-bent on delivering unfinished or erroneous letters? It is eminently clear that the postal service is a means of communication, not an enforcement agency. The postal service cannot force me to mail a letter if I do not want to." "But you did want to," was her reply. "Yes, but I repeat, I do not want to now." "Don't yell at me, that's very rude. It's too late." "It's not too late because the letter's right there." I pointed to the sack of outgoing mail. People were beginning to complain noisily. The old harridan's face was quivering with rage, with true repugnance. I felt all my hatred concentrating on the mole. I can prove I am the person who sent the letter, I repeated, showing her some personal papers. Don't shout at me, I'm not deaf, she protested. I can't make a decision of this importance. Then get your chief. I can't. There are too many people waiting, she said. We're very busy here, can't you see? But things like this are part of your job, I argued. Some of the people behind me suggested that she return the letter and get on with it. She hesitated a moment, pretending to be busy at some other task. Finally, she went into the office and after a lengthy absence returned in a bilious mood. She looked through the sack. What estancia did you say? She hissed. Los Ambues, I replied with venomous calm. After a purposely prolonged search, she held up the letter and began to examine it as if someone had offered to sell it to her, and she had serious questions about wanting to buy it. All it has are initials and an address, she said finally. So? What documentation do you have to prove that you are the person who sent the letter? I have the draft, I said, showing it to her. She took it and looked at it and gave it back to me. And how do we know that this is the draft of this letter? It's very simple. Let's open the envelope and see. She hesitated, looking at the sealed envelope, and said, And how can we open this letter if we don't know it's yours? I can't do that. People began to complain again. I felt I was on the verge of violence. This document is not sufficient, the harpy concluded. Would an ID card be sufficient? I asked with sarcastic courtesy. An ID card? She thought that over, again examined the envelope and pronounced, No, not by itself, because all there are here are initials. I will also need a proof of domicile. Or if you don't have that, a draft card will do. Your address will be on it. She thought better of that, however, and added, Although I'd be surprised if you hadn't moved in 18 years. No, you will need proof of domicile. An uncontainable fury finally exploded in me that included Maria and, oddly enough, Mimi. Go ahead and mail it, and you go to hell, I shouted. I stalked out of the post office in a white-hot rage. I wondered whether if I went back to the window I might somehow set fire to the letter sack. But how? Throw a match in it? The match might go out. If I sprinkled gasoline on it first, the outcome would be sure. But that complicated things. At least I could wait for the employees to leave and then salt the old harridan on her way out.